Welcome back to another video. In this video, it'll be my team selection for round 2 of the Rugby World Cup. But this time, it's actually been a little bit more difficult. So we've got a game starting on the Thursday, then we've got one obviously on the Friday, Saturday and the Sunday. So not all the teams are out yet, so I've had to kind of pick players who I think will play. And it's been pretty difficult because lots of the top teams are playing third-tier nations. So they're obviously going to rotate some of their team around. But I think I've done pretty well at the moment. If we need to do an updated team selection during the round, then I will. So obviously stay tuned, turn notifications on so you don't miss out on those updates. So getting straight into the video and into my team then. In the front row, I've gone with Michael Alalatoa, Joey Lake and Charlie Faumuina. Now, I'll be brutally honest with you all, budget was a real struggle in this round. Not sure why, not sure if players go down in price, and that happened to me last round, but I found it quite a struggle. And I guess that's one of the main reasons why I have a Samoan front row. However, they are up against Chile, so Alalatoa plays for Leinster, probably the best club team in World Rugby. I think he's just going to do a job, right? Samoa are also a little bit of the underdogs in that group. They're playing Chile, who, it was obviously their first Rugby World Cup game last round, showed a pretty good account of themselves against Japan, but in the end lost pretty heavily. So I do expect Samoa to turn the screw on them too. And to touch on Charlie Faumuina, well, he plays for Toulouse, also probably one of the best club sides in the world, and he's a former All Black, so you can't get much better than Alalatoa and Faumuina as your two starting props, to be honest, against a pretty weakened Chile side. And at hooker, I've gone with Welsh captain Joey Lake. Now, we all know Joey Lake came off against England for an injury and hasn't played since. So this game against Portugal is going to be the perfect game to give him some minutes. We've obviously got Ryan Elias on the bench, who came off around 60 minutes in the previous game, but I think they're going to want to get Joey Lake some pretty good minutes, especially against this weakened Portugal side. We're yet to see Portugal in this World Cup, but given Wales' game against Fiji and pretty much how well they played and controlled that game, I'm adamant that they're going to pretty much put the foot down on that Portugal team. Then in the second row, I've again targeted some pretty weak fixtures. I've got my third Samoan in Theo McFarland and Cam Wilkie from France, who's obviously up against Uruguay. Now, we all know in this fantasy there's huge points on offer for line-out steals, but also little points on offer for line-out wins. And Theo McFarland and Cam Wilkie are pretty decent options in the line-out. They can also play back row, or even like a back row player around the field with regards to turnovers. We all know what McFarland can do for Saracens with ball in hand as well. And with regards to Cam Wilkie, I think with the injury to Paul Willemse, this is his chance to really cement his position in that starting 15. It's playing Uruguay, so this is a rotated French team, but it's still one of the best teams in the World Cup. So I'm expecting Wilkie to be elusive around the park, win his lineouts, steal balls against that weak Uruguay lineout, and I'm probably betting on a big France win. Now in the back row, it's pretty interesting to be honest. So I've gone with two New Zealanders in Luke Jacobson and Ardie Savea, who is captaining New Zealand for this round against Namibia. And then I've gone for Quacca Smith against Romania, who is starting at 7 for South Africa. Now Luke Jacobson is one of those fringe players for New Zealand on the back row at the moment. He's got some really stiff competition, but they are up against Namibia, so it's a good chance for him to show his hand. And he's been in a really strong Chiefs team in Super Rugby of late, so I don't underestimate his quality. And to be honest, he needs to have a good game if he is to push into that starting 15 or that 23 squad later in the tournament. Ardie Savea, on the other hand, is captain of this New Zealand team this round, and his place is pretty much cemented as that 8 for New Zealand. I've pulled up his statistics here against France. 24 points isn't great, but if we actually look at it, he won a line-out, got several tackles and beat defenders, and obviously he's really good for offloads and ball carrying, which he didn't really get to do much against France. So against Namibia, they're going to have lots more of the ball and literally play the All Blacks way. So I'm really honing in on Ardie Savea this round. Then finally in the back row is Kwagga Smith, who, similar to Luke Jacobson really has to have a good game against Romania to push into that 23 for South Africa. Their back row is absolutely stacked, so I have no doubt he's got the quality to do it, but it's going to be a pretty tough test for him. He is also an X7s player, so he's really good out wide in space, which I think they'll probably utilise him a little bit in the South African team, who will want to play more as they adapt their game. So with regards to ball carrying in the wide channels, picking up tries might be on his radar, but also turnovers in the wide channels as well will be really key. At halfbacks, I've gone with Grant Williams, who's actually starting on the wing for South Africa in this round, and I've gone with Antoine Hastoy. If we all saw the Scotland versus South Africa game, we all know the impact Grant Williams had. I think he came on and there was a scrum, and all of a sudden he picked and went and made about, 60 metres, beating about 3 or 4 defenders. So we know what he can do, and he's on the wing against Romania. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to rack up some good points. It's also a little bit of a cheat because he's a scrum half in the game, but you do get another outside back into your team. So I'm pretty adamant that he's going to perform pretty well, and he's absolutely rapid too. Antoine Hastoy is an interesting pick because he's unlikely to kick in that team with Malvin Jaminet and Thomas Ramos on the bench. But if anyone's seen how La Rochelle play, they play such an expansive game of rugby that I'm sure that he's going to pull the strings and possibly pick up a few assists against that pretty poor Uruguay team. So it is a bit of a risk. However, we saw how Sexton scored loads of points, obviously with some tries, but also assists. So I'm pretty sure that Hastoy can control that game against Uruguay. Now, as I said at the start, in the centres, budget was pretty hard for me in this team selection. So I've actually gone with Mason Grady from Wales, who is 6.5, and David Havili from New Zealand, who's also 6.5, which I think is a steal. Now, Mason Grady is up against Portugal, and he's a hard run-in 13, a bit like a Jamie Roberts, or even a Manu Tuilangi, to be honest, and that's how I see his role in this Welsh team. He's going to come from 13, wide angles, and hit some good lines, so his ball carrying stats will be up there. They will have more of the ball against Portugal, and you've got playmakers like Gareth Anscombe, who, to be honest, can pretty much pull the strings. So I'm confident in a Wales win, and I'm confident that Mason Grady will get minutes and lots of ball carries. David Havili for New Zealand is another interesting pick. So we all know what he can do for the Crusaders. He's their starting 12, but not this starting 12 in this New Zealand side. He's kind of been ushered out by Geordie Barrett. David Havili, we all know what he can do. He tackles hard and he plays on the gain line as that second playmaker, to be honest, as a 12. So I envisage him to do lots of hard carrying, but also when they're in the 22 zone, ready to score a try, I feel like he can get over with a pretty easy carry, to be honest. So that's how I see him maybe scoring a try and picking up most of his points. And in the back three, which I think is going to be pretty important for this round, I've targeted really weak fixtures again, with Rio Dyer up against Portugal, Melvin Jaminet up against Uruguay, and Makazole Mapimpi against Romania. If you watch the Six Nations, then you know that Rio Dyer offers something a little bit different to that Welsh backline. He's got fast feet, and if you get him in the wide channels, then you know he's going to be a defender. And up against Portugal, I'm pretty confident that their game plan is to hit up hard, as Gats likes to do, and then second, third phase, play it wide and get on the outside channel. And with Reece Zammit and Rio Dyer, I think that's exactly what they plan to exploit. Get your fast wingers down the wing, carrying hard and beating defenders. So I'm backing Rio Dyer to get some good minutes against Portugal as well. Melvin Jaminet for France is, I think, a really solid pick. So 2 Six Nations ago, Melvin Jaminet was the starting 15 and starting kicker for France, and he performed absolutely brilliantly in that fantasy. However, Thomas Ramos has come through, obviously plays for Toulouse now, and has pretty much taken that starting 15 French jersey off of Jaminet. Do I expect him to reclaim that French starting 15 jersey in this game? No. However, we know that Jaminet is solid, both for fantasy points and for kicking. And even though he's not going to be kicking for loads of penalties against Uruguay, there will be lots of conversions, and I do back him at goals. And finally, as my captain for this round, I've gone with Makazole Mapimpi. Now, we all know what he can do. 4 years ago, he was pretty much man of the match for that Rugby World Cup final. And against a really weakened Romanian side, I think Mapimpi can cause some real damage. We've obviously mentioned we've got Grant Williams on the other wing, but Mapimpi is coming back from injury, but also back to form. And I think he's South Africa's starting winger, along with Colby. Arendse just maybe hits the bench, but Mapimpi really needs to get some form and a great game here to push him back in to that starting 15 side. I think he can do it. I think he's absolute quality. He's pretty much a born finisher, so expect Mapimpi to get lots of the ball and literally push his way back into that starting 15 team for South Africa. So there you have it. That is my team for round 2 of the Fantasy Rugby World Cup. I've got no credits left on my budget, so I've really been squeezed into this round. And looking at my team, there's not actually too many actual starting players. As I said before, top tier nations are playing like third, second tier nations, so there's a lot of rotation, but they're still quite expensive. So hopefully this video is providing some good insight into who to pick. Let me know down in the comments who you guys have picked as maybe differentials or different to me. Hoping I can push myself up the leaderboard in our JG Rugby League. If you like the video, then obviously drop it a like, but comment down below your team and, like I said, any differential picks. And also subscribe to the channel. Also turn that notification bell on because there might be an updated team selection video, as some of the teams haven't even named their team sheets yet. That's just the way it's going to work in this World Cup, but that means more videos for you guys, so I'm happy. Thanks for watching, good luck in the round, and I'll see you in the next one.